So how does tech fit into this? The big fear is the shape of the S-curve. That if we get to the next side of the chessboard, if we really make that transformation into a completely digital world, all the truck drivers are gone. Huge amount of disintermediation across multiple industries. All the stuff you're aware of, all the stuff you're trying to get on the right side of. But here's a couple of things to think about. A lot of this technology is there already, but it's not been implemented. Now, why is this? Go back to the fact that wages haven't risen and corporate profits have never been higher. And then consider this. How many of you are from the United States? Just one person to use? Wow, that's amazing. All right, every single two of them. There's every single piece of fruit in every single supermarket in the United States has a sticker on it that's been put there by hand. Now just think about how cheap labor is for that to happen. So if labor is cheap and the cost of capital is zero, you can have huge amounts of tech, but the uncertainty of bringing it in creates a problem. You don't want your firm to take the plunge if nobody else takes the plunge, but if nobody else is willing to take the plunge, who's going to take the plunge? Particularly when you're already making more money than you've made in the past 30 years because profits have never been higher. So you have a stable world, you have a predictable world, you have a world in which there's every incentive to make the jump. But there's every incentive not to make the jump, which might explain why we see tech everywhere, but we don't see it in our hands. We don't see it in our lives to the extent that we would think. The positive side of this story, I think, is the following. Governments are awful, uniformly, but policy really matters. And we have in our mind with this technological transformation that the shape of the S-curve is this. You're there, it's an incredibly short time period, and that's the big disruption. That's when the populace will have a field day. Because if they're not going anywhere, and all this tech comes in, and what you're doing is essentially enhancing the returns to firms that got bailed out in the crisis, and they're the ones that capture all the returns from robots, and inequality goes through the roof even more than it does now, there'll be a political price to pay. But it doesn't have to be that way. Good policy matters. Education, training, adjustment, all the stuff that we need. So what I encourage business leaders to do is to talk to the politicians and tell them that the following is not good enough. We know this is going to happen, and it can happen well, or it can happen badly. Do not think that badly is an option. You have to educate them into recognizing that policy goes together with the integration of technology in the workplace. And that you guys can solve problems by increasing productivity, because if we're not doing that, we're not growing, you're not able to actually solve that underlying wage problem. So there's a really positive story there as well, but what it means is engagement with policymakers. And the last one is, and I'm quite sure this one is true, the lump of labor fallacy. It comes up every time there's a technological change. The idea that there's a certain amount of work to be done, and then the robots or robotic processors or whatever come in and do it, and then that's it, there's no more work. Yet bear in mind that every single time we've had a technological transformation, labor markets have gotten bigger, not smaller. There's more work to be done by virtue of the fact that technology has changed what it's possible to do. So the combination, I think, is very hopeful, so long as the engagement is there between business, explaining to governments what needs to be done, and holding their feet to the fire to make sure that it is done. And if that happens, we can have that technological transformation, and everyone can benefit from it. Let's wind it back to the end. So what does this mean for populism? If that reading of populism is right, it's basically too high debts, not enough inflation, not enough wage growth, people are upset, unequal rewards. Then the only thing that will solve this is growth. Growth is really just about productivity. And a huge part of that is tech. So we have to embrace this. Otherwise, they're not going to go anywhere soon and might end up running somewhere important at some point, and that would be extremely unfortunate. But the good news is it doesn't have to be that way. Because ultimately, if we're smart about the incorporation of tech, if we're smart for recognizing that the world is long and low, and that's a structural feature, you can build a world where you've got 2% real, low inflation, permanent central bank put, which means that your safe assets, bonds, are negative yielding, but they're not going to go anywhere. They're not going to blow up in your face. You can really go quite far out in the risk spectrum because of that. And because of that, you're able to earn enough cash that your R&D budgets, along with your tax payments, along with adjustment, can actually make that system work for everybody.